The Grand Council chamber of the Galactic Defense Force stretched high above Captain Minho's head. Tall alien beings sat in floating chairs around a massive circular table. Their skin glowed with different colors, blue, green, purple, and their eyes looked down at him with barely hidden disgust. Minho stood perfectly still in his simple gray uniform. His boots were worn from years of service and his face showed the scars of many battles. Around the table, the alien admirals whispered to each other in their strange languages. Admiral Veltar, a tall blue creature with 4 arms, finally spoke. His voice came through the translation device with a cold, mechanical tone. Captain Minho of the human colonial forces. You are here because we have a problem. Yes, sir, Minho replied simply. A holographic image appeared above the table. It showed a planet covered in black and red storms. Lightning crashed across its surface every few seconds. The planet looked like a nightmare come to life. This is planet designation XK739, Veltar continued. Your people call it Kairos. 3 months ago it was home to 2 million colonists from the Keshari Empire. Now it belongs to the Vorthak swarm. Minho had heard of the Vorthak. They were biomechanical monsters that ate entire worlds. Once they landed on a planet, nothing could stop them. They turned everything into more of themselves. The soil, the air, even the rocks. The Vorthak have made this world into something impossible, said Admiral Kesti, a purple alien with tentacles instead of arms. The atmosphere is now poison. The gravity changes without warning. Acid rain falls from the sky. And worst of all, the Vorthak creatures hunt anything that moves. Another admiral, this one green with 6 eyes, leaned forward. We have sent 3 military expeditions to retake this world. The first was our elite Keshari stormtroops, 5,000 of our best warriors. They lasted 4 hours. The second expedition was a joint force of Zelani shock troops and Morthak heavy infantry, Admiral Veltar added. 7,000 soldiers with the best equipment in the galaxy. They survived 6 hours before all contact was lost. Minho listened without showing any emotion on his face. Behind him, Lieutenant So Young shifted slightly. She was his communications officer, young but smart. Next to her stood Sergeant Taejun, a veteran with gray hair and steady hands. The third expedition, Veltar continued, was led by Admiral Korvash himself. 10,000 troops, orbital support, heavy armor. They managed to establish a landing zone for exactly 3 hours and 27 minutes. The hologram changed to show twisted metal wreckage scattered across the planet's surface. Pieces of alien ships stuck out of the ground like broken teeth. Every sensor reading, every probe we send tells us the same thing, said Admiral Kesti. This world cannot support life anymore. The Vorthak have turned it into a death trap that kills everything it touches. Minho nodded slowly. And you want human forces to attempt what 3 elite alien armies could not accomplish. Not attempt, Veltar said with something that might have been a smile. We want you to create a distraction. While your forces engage the Vorthak on the surface, our real military will prepare for orbital bombardment. We will destroy the planet from space. So Young stepped forward slightly. Sir, with respect, what about the colonists who might still be alive? Admiral Kesti's tentacles waved dismissively. Scans show no life signs that match Keshari biology. The colonists are gone. All that remains is to stop the Vorthak from spreading to other worlds. Your job is simple, Veltar explained. Land on the surface. Make noise. Draw the Vorthak attention. Hold their focus for as long as possible while we charge our planet-killer weapons. Sergeant Taejun's jaw tightened, but he said nothing. Minho knew what his old friend was thinking. They were being sent to die so the aliens could destroy a world from the safety of space. How long do you estimate our forces will survive? Minho asked. The alien admirals looked at each other. Finally, Veltar answered. Based on previous expeditions and accounting for human limitations, we calculate approximately 6 standard hours before total unit loss. 6 hours, Minho repeated. Your species is new to galactic warfare, said the Green Admiral. You lack the advanced technology and physical advantages of the Keshari or Zelani. But you are expendable, and sometimes cannon fodder serves a purpose. Minho felt So Young tense behind him. He could almost hear her teeth grinding together. Taejun's breathing became slightly deeper, the way it always did when he was controlling his anger. How many troops? Minho asked. Your entire 47th Terran Expeditionary Force, Veltar replied. Approximately 800 soldiers. It should be sufficient for our needs. The council chamber fell silent except for the soft humming of alien technology. Minho looked up at the hologram of the death world they wanted him to assault. Storms raged across its surface. Lightning struck the ground over and over. He could see movement in the clouds, things that looked alive and hungry. "Sir," So Young whispered, 800 soldiers against an entire planet of biomechanical horrors, in an environment that has already killed 15,000 elite alien troops. Minho turned slightly toward her. "Are you questioning our orders, Lieutenant?" "No, sir," she replied immediately. "Just confirming the parameters of our mission." Taejun stepped forward. "Captain, the boys are ready." "They always are." Minho straightened his shoulders and looked directly at Admiral Veltar. "The 47th Terran Expeditionary Force accepts this assignment. We will deploy immediately." "Excellent," Veltar said. "We have prepared transport ships and basic equipment. Nothing too advanced. We cannot waste valuable resources on such a short operation." "When do we leave?" Minho asked. "Immediately. Every hour we delay gives the Vorthak more time to strengthen their position." As the council session ended, the alien admirals began talking among themselves, already forgetting about the humans they had just sent to die. Minho turned and walked toward the exit with So Young and Taejun beside him. "Captain," So Young said quietly as they left the chamber, "they expect us to fail." "They expect us to die," Taejun corrected grimly. Minho paused at the doorway and looked back at the hologram still showing the nightmare world of Kairos. Lightning crashed across its surface in endless fury. "Maybe they're right," he said simply. "But the 47th has never failed a mission yet. And we're not going to start now." They walked out into the corridor, their footsteps echoing in the vast alien ship. Behind them, the Council continued planning for orbital bombardment, already writing off the human expedition as a minor footnote in military history. None of them knew they were about to witness something that would change galactic warfare forever. The transport ship shook violently as it entered Kairos' atmosphere. Private Dongwu gripped his rifle and tried not to look out the small window beside him. Every time lightning flashed outside, he could see things moving in the clouds. Things that definitely were not supposed to be there. 2 minutes to drop zone, shouted Sergeant Kite over the noise of the engines. The ship lurched sideways as acid rain hit the hull, making a sound like someone throwing gravel at metal. Corporal Mijin checked her environmental suit one more time. The readings on her arm display made her stomach turn. The air outside was poison to human lungs. The temperature changed from freezing cold to burning hot every few minutes. And the radiation levels were so high that their equipment could barely measure them. "How the hell did colonists ever live here?" Private Junseo muttered. "They didn't," Kite replied grimly. "This planet was normal until the Vorthak got to it. Now it's trying to kill everything that breathes." The ship's bottom doors opened with a loud clang. Wind immediately rushed in, carrying the smell of sulfur and rotting metal. Captain Hyunjin of Alpha Company stood at the edge of the drop door, looking down at the nightmare landscape below. The ground was black and twisted. Strange trees grew everywhere, but they looked more like metal spikes than plants. Rivers of something that glowed green ran between rocky hills, and in the distance massive spires reached toward the storm clouds pulsing with red light. "Remember the plan," Hyunjin shouted to his troops. "Establish perimeter. Hold position! Make lots of noise to draw attention." The first soldiers jumped from the ship. Their parachutes opened automatically, carrying them down through the acid rain toward the hostile surface. Dongwu followed, his heart pounding as the wind grabbed him and threw him around like a toy. He landed hard on ground that felt squishy beneath his boots. When he looked down, he realized he was standing on something that looked like flesh. The entire landscape was covered in a thin layer of organic material that moved slightly when he stepped on it. "Contact," someone screamed over the radio. "Movement southeast." Dongwu turned and saw his first Vorthak creature. It was the size of a large truck with 6 legs that ended in razor-sharp claws. Its body was part machine and part animal, covered in metal plates that grew from its skin. Green acid dripped from its mouth as it charged toward the landing zone. The soldiers opened fire immediately. Bullets bounced off the creature's armor, but eventually found soft spots between the plates. The Vorthak stumbled and fell, but 2 more appeared behind it. "They're coming from underground," Mijin shouted. She was right. The flesh-like ground was splitting open in dozens of places, revealing tunnels full of moving shadows. Captain Hyunjin watched the tactical situation develop through his helmet display. The alien military observers in orbit were probably expecting his forces to dig in and create a defensive position, just like the previous expeditions had tried. But Hyunjin had read the reports of those failed missions. Staying in one place meant death. "All units, this is Alpha Leader," he broadcast. "Forget the perimeter. Scatter formation. Move to the toxic marshlands immediately." "Sir," came a confused voice over the radio. "The marshlands are marked as extremely hazardous. Lethal environmental conditions." "Exactly," Hyunjin replied as he sprinted toward a glowing green swamp. "If it's trying to kill us, it's probably trying to kill them too. Move." Private Dongwu followed his captain into the marsh, even though every sensor on his suit was screaming warnings. The water came up to his knees and felt warm through his boots. Steam rose from the surface, carrying a smell like burned plastic, but something interesting happened. As soon as the humans entered the swamp, the Vorthak creatures stopped following them. They gathered at the edge of the toxic water, making angry clicking sounds, but they would not enter. "Well, I'll be damned," muttered Sergeant Kaite. "They don't like this place either." The soldiers waded deeper into the marsh, using the poison swamp as cover from their hunters. The environmental suits that the aliens had given them were basic models, designed for short-term use. But they were also simple and tough, built by humans who understood that complicated technology breaks when you need it most. Mijin discovered something else interesting. Her suit's air recycler was actually processing the toxic atmosphere and finding useful gases mixed in with the poison. "Hey, Sarge," she called to Kaite. "My oxygen levels are staying stable. This stuff isn't just poison, there's breathable air mixed in." "Same here," reported Junseo. "My suit is filtering out the bad stuff and keeping the good. It's like the air is trying to kill us and feed us at the same time." Lieutenant Nari, leading Bravo Squad through a different section of the marsh, made another discovery. The acid rain that was supposed to eat through their equipment was actually being neutralized by the ceramic plating on their armor. Human military gear was built to survive in the worst conditions Earth could offer. Compared to a direct nuclear blast or a Category 6 hurricane, acid rain was just another Tuesday. "Command, this is Nari," she reported to Captain Hyunjin. "The environmental hazards are manageable. Repeat, we can operate in this environment for extended periods." In orbit, Admiral Veltar stared at his tactical display in confusion. The human life signs were not only stable, they were spreading out across the planet's most dangerous regions. According to every computer model, they should have been dead within the first hour. "Are the sensors malfunctioning?" he asked his technical officer. "No, sir. All readings are accurate. The humans are. They appear to be thriving in conditions that killed our best troops." Back on the surface, Captain Hyunjin was beginning to understand something that the alien expeditions had missed. The Vorthak had turned this planet into a perfect killing machine, but they had designed it to kill aliens, creatures with advanced technology, sophisticated environmental systems, and bodies adapted to clean, controlled environments. Humans were different. They came from a world where everything was trying to kill them anyway. Their equipment was simple but tough. Their bodies were adapted to survive in harsh conditions, and most importantly, they were used to making bad situations work in their favor. "All units, this is Alpha Leader," Hyunjin broadcast. "New mission parameters. We're not just surviving this Hellworld. We're going to make it our home." Private Dongwu, now standing waist-deep in glowing poison water while acid rain bounced off his helmet, couldn't help but grin. Around him, his squad mates were setting up defensive positions using the toxic environment as natural barriers. For the first time since landing, he was starting to think they might actually have a chance. The Vorthak creatures continued to prowl the edges of the swamp, clicking and hissing in frustration. They had never encountered prey that deliberately sought out the most dangerous parts of their hunting ground. High above, Admiral Veltar checked his chronometer. 6 hours had passed since the human landing. According to every calculation, every model, every piece of data from previous expeditions, the human forces should have been completely destroyed by now. Instead, his sensors showed them establishing multiple forward positions in areas so toxic that his own scouts couldn't even get close enough to observe. For the first time in his long military career, Admiral Veltar began to wonder if perhaps he had underestimated the strange little mammals from the third planet of a minor star system. On the surface, Captain Minho finally made contact with his scattered companies. "All units report status. Alpha Company operational, sir." We've turned a poison swamp into a fortress. Bravo Company Green, Captain. We're using acid rivers as defensive barriers. Charlie Company ready for orders, sir. We found caves that are too radioactive for the Vorthak. Perfect for us. Minho smiled for the first time since taking this assignment. The aliens had sent them to die on an impossible world. Instead, they had found themselves a new home. 3 weeks had passed since the impossible landing, and Admiral Veltar could no longer deny what his sensors were telling him. The humans were not just alive, they were expanding their territory every day. Show me the tactical display again, he ordered his bridge crew. The holographic map of Kairos appeared, showing the planet's surface divided into different colored zones. Red areas marked Vorthak territory. Yellow zones indicated hazardous environments too dangerous for military operations. And scattered across the deadliest parts of the map were small blue dots, human forward operating bases. Sir, reported his tactical officer, a nervous young Kashari named Vosti. The humans have established 17 separate positions. All of them are located in areas we classified as uninhabitable. Veltar studied the map more closely. The human bases were positioned in volcanic zones, acid marshlands, and areas where gravity fluctuated wildly, places where his own troops had died within minutes of exposure. What is their casualty rate? He asked. That's just it, sir. Vosti replied, his voice filled with confusion. Their casualty rate is in 0. Impossible. I've checked the readings 12 times, Admiral. Not only have they taken no losses, but their biosignatures indicate they are healthier now than when they arrived. Down on the planet's surface, Specialist Yu Jin was proving exactly why the sensors were reading impossible data. She had spent the morning collecting samples from a thermal vent that would have killed any alien within seconds. Her environmental suit was processing the superheated gases and somehow extracting useful minerals from them. Hey, Kite, she called to her sergeant. This sulfur compound can actually boost our oxygen recyclers. We're getting better air down here than we did on the transport ship. Sergeant Kaite shook his head in amazement. 3 weeks ago, he had expected to die on this Hellworld. Now he was watching his soldiers treat it like a camping trip. Private Junseo had figured out how to use Vorthak bioacid to strengthen their defensive barriers. Corporal Mijin had discovered edible fungi growing in the radioactive caves, and Dongwu had somehow made friends with a small creature that looked like a cross between a lizard and a landmine. Don't get too comfortable, Kite warned Yujin. We still have a job to do. That job had evolved far beyond the original mission parameters. What started as a 6-hour distraction had become a systematic campaign to clear the Vorthak from their strongholds. And the humans were winning. The key breakthrough had come when Lieutenant Nari discovered that the Vorthak avoided certain areas of the planet not because they couldn't survive there, but because those areas interfered with their biomechanical systems. The volcanic zones generated electromagnetic fields that disrupted their neural networks. The acid marshes contained compounds that corroded their metal components. The gravity fluctuation zones scrambled their coordination systems. The alien expeditions had seen these environmental hazards as obstacles to overcome. The humans had learned to see them as weapons to employ. "Command, this is Recon Team 7, came a voice over the radio. It was Private Song Min, leading a patrol through the crystal forest where gravity changed direction every few minutes. We've located another Vorthak hive cluster. Looks like they're trying to establish a new breeding facility. Captain Hyun Jin, now operating from a command post built inside an active volcano, studied the tactical information on his display. The Vorthak were intelligent creatures, but they were also predictable. They established their hives in areas with stable environmental conditions, places where their biomechanical systems could function efficiently. Unfortunately for them, humans had spent 3 weeks learning to live in the unstable zones. Now they could attack Vorthak positions from directions the enemy never expected. Songmin, what's your current position relative to the gravitational anomaly field? Hyunjin asked. About 200 meters east, sir. We can see the distortion waves from here. Perfect. Wait for my signal, then drive them toward the anomaly zone. We'll be waiting on the other side. This had become the standard human tactic on Kairos. Use the planet's own deadliness as a weapon against enemies who couldn't adapt to it. The Vorthak were evolved to be perfect predators, but only in environments they could control. Sergeant Taijun led his squad through a tunnel system that connected several human bases. The tunnels had been carved by acid erosion, and the walls still dripped with corrosive chemicals that would dissolve alien equipment in seconds. But human ceramic armor, originally designed to survive nuclear fallout, handled the acid like water. "Remember when we thought this place was trying to kill us?" asked Private Dongwu as they walked through the glowing green tunnel. "It is trying to kill us," Taejun replied. "We're just too stubborn to die." At Forward Operating Base Alpha, built on a platform over a lava lake, Captain Minho reviewed the weekly reports from his company commanders. The news was better than he had dared to hope 3 weeks ago. Alpha Company had eliminated 6 Vorthak breeding sites and captured enough biomaterial to understand their reproduction cycle. Bravo Company had secured the northern acid marshes and established a supply route through terrain the enemy couldn't cross. Charlie Company had turned a radiation zone into an impregnable fortress that served as the main communications hub for all human forces. But the most remarkable report came from Delta Company, led by Lieutenant So Young. They had been assigned to the gravitational anomaly zone, where the planet's unstable core created areas where up and down changed randomly. "Sir," So Young reported over the secure channel, "we've learned to predict the gravity shifts. There's a pattern to the anomalies based on seismic activity. My people can now move through the zone faster than on normal terrain." Minho had to read that report twice before he believed it. His soldiers weren't just surviving in an environment that killed everything else. They were using it to move faster and fight more effectively. "Any sign of Vorthak adaptation to our tactics?" he asked. "Negative, sir. If anything, they seem to be withdrawing from contested areas. Long-range sensors show them consolidating in the stable zones near the equator." That was the most encouraging news yet. For the first time since the Vorthak had arrived on Kairos, they were retreating. Not because they were defeated by superior firepower or advanced technology, but because they couldn't compete with creatures that treated their perfect death world like a playground. In orbit, Admiral Veltar faced a problem he had never encountered in 40 years of military service. His tactical computers could not calculate how to proceed with the mission. The original plan called for orbital bombardment once the human distraction forces were eliminated. But the humans showed no signs of being eliminated. In fact, they were actively requesting additional supplies and talking about permanent colonization rights. "Sir," reported his communications officer, "we're receiving another transmission from the surface." "Put it through," Veltar sighed. Captain Minho's face appeared on the main screen. Behind him, Veltar could see human soldiers moving casually through what appeared to be a shower of acid rain. They were laughing and joking as if they were taking a walk in the park. "Admiral," Minho said in his calm, professional tone. "The 47th Terran Expeditionary Force reports continued progress on primary objectives. We have established secure zones covering approximately 30% of the continental landmass. Vorthak forces are in retreat across all sectors." Veltar looked at his tactical display, then back at the screen. "Captain Minho, according to our projections, your forces should have been eliminated weeks ago. How are you not only surviving, but advancing against an enemy that destroyed 3 of our elite expeditions?" Minho considered the question for a moment. "Sir, I think the problem with the previous expeditions was that they were trying to fight the planet and the Vorthak at the same time. We decided to make the planet fight the Vorthak for us." Behind Minho, a soldier walked by carrying what appeared to be a piece of Vorthak biotechnology that was still twitching. The soldier was using it like a tool, apparently immune to whatever toxins it was producing. "Admiral," Minho continued, "my troops have developed a strong attachment to this world. Several companies have submitted formal requests for post-mission colonization rights. They'd like to stay here permanently." Veltar stared at the screen in disbelief. The humans wanted to live on a planet that was literally designed to kill everything that set foot on it. "Captain," he said slowly, "are you telling me that your soldiers want to make their homes on a Vorthak-infested Hellworld?" Minho smiled for the first time since the mission began. "Sir, after 3 weeks here, most of my people think this place is paradise. Clean air, fresh water, plenty of space, and all the excitement you could want. What more could a soldier ask for?" The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Veltar staring at a blank screen. Around him, his bridge crew worked in stunned silence. Finally, his tactical officer spoke up. "Sir, what are our orders regarding the orbital bombardment?" Veltar looked at his tactical display one more time. The blue dots representing human positions had spread across nearly half the planet. The red zones marking Vorthak territory were shrinking every day. Cancel the bombardment, he said quietly. I don't think we need it anymore. 6 weeks after the landing that was supposed to last 6 hours, the Vorthak were experiencing something they had never encountered in their thousands of years of expansion across the galaxy. Fear. Deep in the primary hive complex, the Vorthak prime form studied tactical data that made no sense. The creatures that had landed on their perfectly designed killing world were not only surviving, they were hunting. And worse, they were winning. The biomechanical entity that served as the Vorthak's supreme intelligence tried to process what its scouts were reporting. The small mammals used the toxic atmosphere as a breathing supplement. They built their shelters in areas where lava flows provided heating. They moved through gravitational anomalies like they were dancing. And most disturbing of all, they had learned to use Vorthak bioweapons against their creators. Private Junseo had become something of a legend among the human forces for exactly that reason. He crouched now in the ruins of a Vorthak biolaboratory, carefully collecting acid from a destroyed creature twice his size. His ceramic armor showed dozens of scars from previous battles. But the acid that should have eaten through anything only made his equipment stronger. Got another batch, he reported to his squad leader over the radio. This stuff is perfect for breaching those biometal barriers they like to hide behind. Sergeant Kite watched Junseo work with a mixture of pride and amazement. 6 weeks ago, his soldiers had been rookies who jumped at shadows. Now they treated Vorthak bioweapons like tools in a workshop. Load it up, Kite ordered. Intelligence reports a major hive cluster about 10 clicks southeast, and they've got some kind of new defensive adaptation we haven't seen before. The Vorthak had indeed developed new defenses, but they were based on a fundamental misunderstanding of their enemy. The biomechanical creatures assumed they were fighting another technological species that would be stopped by enhanced energy barriers and improved armor plating. They didn't understand that humans had spent 6 weeks learning to turn their technology against them. Lieutenant Nari led her platoon through a lava tube that connected several volcanic vents. The tube would have been instantly lethal to any other species in the galaxy, but her soldiers moved through it like they were walking down a city street. Their equipment had been modified with parts salvaged from destroyed Vorthak creatures, creating hybrid systems that worked better than either original design. Contact ahead, whispered Corporal Mijin from the point position. Looks like a sentry post. New bioforms I haven't seen before. Nari moved up to observe the enemy position. The Vorthak had stationed guards that looked like metallic spiders the size of houses. Their bodies pulsed with energy shields that would deflect any known weapon, and their legs ended in claws that could cut through solid rock. Standard assault? Asked Mijin. No, Nari replied with a predatory smile. Remember what Junseo discovered about their energy systems? They're powered by absorbing environmental energy, heat, radiation, electrical fields. So we deny them power? Better. We give them too much. Nari's plan was simple and completely insane by galactic military standards. Instead of avoiding the environmental hazards around the Vorthak position, her platoon would deliberately trigger them. The volcanic vents could be overloaded to create massive energy discharges. The gravitational anomalies could be destabilized to create chaotic fields. And the acid pools could be weaponized to create chemical reactions that would overwhelm the Vorthak's biomechanical systems. 20 minutes later, the Vorthak sentry post was a smoking crater. The creatures had been destroyed not by human weapons, but by their own planet turned against them. Captain Hyun-jin observed the tactical situation from his mobile command post, a converted Vorthak biotransport that his engineers had reprogrammed to serve human needs. The alien vessel had been designed to carry Vorthak warriors through the planet's most dangerous zones. Now it carried human soldiers who thought those zones were the safest places to travel. All units, this is Alpha Leader. He broadcast to his scattered forces. Intelligence reports the Vorthak are consolidating their remaining forces around the primary hive complex. Looks like they're preparing for a final defensive stand. The response from his company commanders was immediate and enthusiastic. Bravo Company ready to advance, sir. We've got the southeastern approach locked down. Charlie Company in position on the northern ridge. The boys are eager to finish this. Delta Company has flanked around to the western valleys. All defensive positions identified and marked for elimination. Hyunjin studied his tactical display with satisfaction. The Vorthak had made a classic military mistake. They had concentrated their forces in a single location, thinking it would make them stronger. But concentration only worked if your enemy couldn't reach you. The humans could reach anywhere on this planet. Private Dongwu rappelled down a cliff face that sparkled with radioactive crystals, his equipment absorbing and converting the radiation into additional power for his systems. Below him, he could see the massive Vorthak hive complex spreading across the valley floor. It was an impressive sight. Biomechanical spires reached hundreds of meters into the air, pulsing with alien light. Swarms of Vorthak creatures moved between the structures like blood cells in a vast organism. Energy barriers shimmered around. The entire complex and defensive positions bristled with weapons that could level a city. 6 weeks ago, the sight would have terrified him. Now Dongwu just smiled and activated his targeting system. "Recon Team 4 to all units," he reported. "I have eyes on the primary target, counting approximately 5,000 Vorthak entities, multiple biomechanical structures, and enough firepower to sterilize a continent." "Copy that, Dongwu," came Captain Minho's voice over the radio. "What's your assessment?" Dongwu looked down at the alien fortress one more time, noting the defensive positions and the movement patterns of the guards. Then he noticed something else. The entire complex was built in a stable zone, away from all the environmental hazards that made this planet so deadly. "Sir," he said with growing excitement, "they've built their entire defensive position in the one place on this planet where we can't use the environment against them." "That sounds like a problem, Private." "No, sir," Dongwu grinned. "That sounds like an opportunity. They've moved away from all the things that make them strong. Now they're fighting us on our terms." Captain Minho understood immediately. The Vorthak had made the same mistake that 3 alien expeditions had made before them. They were trying to fight this war using conventional tactics, treating the planet's environmental hazards as obstacles to overcome rather than weapons to employ. But humans had spent 6 weeks learning a different way of war, a way that turned the deadliest environment in the galaxy into the perfect battlefield. "All units, this is actual," Minho broadcast to his entire force. "Prepare for final assault on the primary hive complex. Remember, we're not trying to conquer this fortress. We're going to bring this entire Hellworld down on top of it." The plan that Minho outlined over the next hour was so audacious that it made every previous human military operation look cautious by comparison. They were going to trigger a chain reaction of environmental disasters that would engulf the entire valley. Volcanic eruptions, gravitational anomalies, acid floods, and radiation storms, all timed to converge on the Vorthak position simultaneously. It was the kind of plan that required perfect coordination, precise timing, and soldiers who were completely comfortable operating in conditions that would kill anyone else in the galaxy. Fortunately, after 6 weeks on Kairos, those were exactly the kind of soldiers Minho commanded. Sergeant Taejun led his squad to their assigned position near a cluster of unstable volcanic vents. Their job was to overload the geothermal systems at exactly the right moment to trigger a massive eruption. "You know," said Private Songmin, as he placed explosive charges around the vent controls. "6 weeks ago I thought this planet was hell. What do you think now?" Taejun asked. Songmin looked around at the glowing lava, the acid rain, and the radioactive storm clouds, then grinned. "Now I think hell is too soft a word. This place is paradise for someone who likes a challenge." In their fortress valley, the Vorthak prime form felt the first tremors of seismic activity and tried to calculate what was happening. But the biomechanical entity was designed to understand biological and technological warfare. It had no concept of an enemy that would deliberately destabilize an entire planetary ecosystem just to win a single battle. The Vorthak had created the perfect killing world, designed to destroy any species that tried to invade it. They had never considered the possibility that someone might turn that killing world against them. High above in orbit, Admiral Veltar watched his sensors detect massive energy buildups across the entire planetary surface. Whatever the humans were planning, it was bigger than anything in his military experience. "Sir," reported his tactical officer nervously, "should we prepare for immediate evacuation? Those energy readings suggest a planet-wide catastrophic event." Veltar looked at the readings one more time, then shook his head. "No. If I've learned anything about humans over the past 6 weeks, it's that they know exactly what they're doing, even when it looks completely insane. Down on the surface, Captain Attio. The explosion could be seen from orbit. Admiral Veltar watched through the main view screen as the entire southern continent of Kairos erupted in a chain reaction of environmental disasters. Volcanic eruptions painted the sky red. Gravitational anomalies twisted the landscape into impossible shapes. Acid storms raged across valleys that were simultaneously freezing and burning. And in the center of it all, where the massive Vorthak hive complex had stood, there was now only a crater that glowed with the light of a small star. "Sir," reported his tactical officer in a voice filled with awe, "I'm reading complete elimination of Vorthak biosignatures in the target zone. The primary hive complex has been, well, it's been completely obliterated, and the human forces, still operational, sir. All units reporting minimal casualties. They're requesting permission to begin salvage operations in the crater zone." Veltar stared at the screen in disbelief. The humans had just triggered what amounted to a controlled apocalypse, destroying an enemy that had terrorized the galaxy for centuries, and now they wanted to go shopping in the radioactive ruins. Down on the planet's surface, Captain Minho stood on a ridge overlooking the destruction his forces had created. The valley that had contained the Vorthak stronghold was now a landscape that defied description. Lava flows carved new rivers through crystal formations. Lightning storms raged in a sky that couldn't decide what color it wanted to be, and somewhere in the distance, gravitational anomalies were making pieces of the destroyed hive complex float in midair. "Well," said Sergeant Taejun, standing beside his captain. That was loud. Private Dongwu approached them, his environmental suit covered in a fine layer of radioactive ash that sparkled in the strange light. "Sir, the salvage teams are having a field day down there. Turns out when you blow up Vorthak biotechnology in the middle of a volcanic eruption, it creates some really interesting materials." "Interesting how?" Minho asked. "Corporal Mijin thinks we can use the fused biometal to improve our armor systems, and Specialist Yujin believes the crystallized organic compounds could revolutionize our life support technology." Minho nodded, unsurprised. Over the past 2 months, his soldiers had become experts at finding useful applications for things that were supposed to kill them. "What about the remaining Vorthak forces?" "That's the best part, sir," Dongwu grinned. "According to long-range sensors, they're evacuating the planet. All of them. Apparently, watching us turn their homeworld into a weapon convinced them that this isn't a fight they want to continue." It was true. Across the planet, the remaining Vorthak creatures were fleeing to their bioships and launching into space as fast as their organic technology could carry them. For the first time in their species' history, the perfect predators were running from their prey. The Vorthak prime form, what remained of it after the psychic shock of losing its primary hive, transmitted one final message before its forces departed. Classification: human species. Threat level: beyond calculation. Recommendation: immediate evacuation of all Vorthak forces from this star system. Further recommendation: avoid all contact with human entities. These creatures are not natural predators. They are something far worse. Lieutenant So Young approached Captain Minho with a communication device in her hand. "Sir, we're receiving a transmission from the orbital fleet. Admiral Veltar wants to speak with you personally." Minho took the device and activated it. Admiral Veltar's blue face appeared on the small screen, and for the first time since this mission began, the alien military commander looked genuinely respectful. "Captain Minho," Veltar said formally, "on behalf of the Galactic Defense Council, I must express our gratitude for your force's performance on Kairos. The complete elimination of the Vorthak presence exceeds every expectation we had for this mission." "Thank you." "Sir?" Minho replied simply. "I must ask," Veltar continued, "how many casualties did your forces sustain during the final assault?" Minho checked his tactical display. 2 soldiers suffered minor burns from volcanic ash exposure. 1 private sprained his ankle when a gravity fluctuation threw him into a tree. And Sergeant Kaite has a mild case of radiation poisoning, but he says it's actually making him feel younger. There was a long pause from the orbital fleet. "Captain," Veltar said slowly, "are you telling me that your forces just triggered a planet-wide catastrophic event? Eliminated an enemy that has terrorized the galaxy for millennia, and took essentially 0 casualties in the process?" That's correct, sir. Another pause. When Veltar spoke again, his voice carried a tone Minho had never heard from an alien commander before. Something that sounded almost like fear. Captain Minho, what exactly are humans? Minho considered the question seriously. Around him, his soldiers were going about their business with casual efficiency. Private Junseo was teaching a group of rookies how to extract useful minerals from radioactive crystal formations. Corporal Mi Jin was leading a patrol through acid rain while discussing weekend leave plans. Sergeant Tae Jun was using a piece of Vorthak biotechnology as a chair while he filed his after-action reports. Sir, Minho said finally, we're just soldiers doing our job. No, Veltar replied firmly. I have commanded soldiers from 24 species across 40 years of military service. What I just witnessed was not normal soldier behavior. Normal soldiers do not thrive in conditions that kill everything else. Normal soldiers do not turn entire worlds into weapons. Normal soldiers do not treat apocalyptic environmental disasters as minor inconveniences. Minho shrugged. Maybe the problem is that everyone else's definition of normal is too limited. The transmission ended, but Minho could hear Veltar speaking to his bridge crew in the background. Send immediate communications to all fleet commands. Classification update for human military forces. Previous assessments were inadequate. 3 days later, the evacuation transports arrived to take the 47th Terran Expeditionary Force back to civilization. But there was a problem. Most of the soldiers didn't want to leave. Sir, Sergeant Kaite reported to Captain Minho, I've got over 300 requests for permanent assignment to Kairos. The boys have gotten attached to this place. Minho understood why. After 2 months of turning the deadliest environment in the galaxy into their personal playground, the idea of returning to safe, boring, normal worlds didn't appeal to many of his troops. What about the colonization requests? He asked. Approved by the Galactic Council this morning, Kite grinned. Apparently, they're so impressed with our performance that they're offering us exclusive settlement rights to the entire planet. They're also asking if we'd be interested in taking on similar assignments in the future. Similar assignments? Hellworld, sir. Planets too dangerous for normal military forces to operate on. Turns out there are dozens of them scattered across the galaxy. And they're all considered strategic liabilities because no one can establish permanent bases there. Minho looked around at the transformed landscape of Kairos. His soldiers had built a thriving military installation in an environment that had killed 3 elite alien expeditions. They had turned volcanic vents into power sources, acid storms into defensive barriers, and gravitational anomalies into rapid transit systems. If this was what humans could accomplish on one impossible world, what could they do with dozens? Tell the council we're interested, he said. But we have conditions, sir. We want our families here. If Kairos is going to be a human world, it should be a real human world. Schools, hospitals, parks, and the whole package. Kite stared at him. Sir, are you sure about this? This planet was literally designed to kill everything that lives on it. Minho smiled and gestured toward the vista spread out before them. Acid rain was falling from purple clouds while lightning struck crystal formations that sang in the wind. Lava flows carved patterns through valleys where strange plants grew in soil that glowed with its own light. And in the distance, his soldiers were playing what appeared to be a game of football in a gravitational anomaly field, where the ball kept changing direction in midair. Sergeant, he said, look around. My troops aren't just surviving here. They're having the time of their lives. Why wouldn't we want to raise our children in paradise? 6 months later, the first civilian transports arrived at Kairos carrying the families of the 47th Terran Expeditionary Force. The children adapted to their new environment even faster than the soldiers had, treating acid rain like snow and gravitational anomalies like jungle gyms. Admiral Veltar received regular reports about the human colony, each one more impossible than the last. The humans had established permanent settlements in volcanic zones. They were farming crops in radioactive soil. Their children were playing games that involved jumping between floating islands in gravity-distorted air. And most remarkably, they were happy. The final report that crossed Veltar's desk changed galactic military doctrine forever. It was a simple request from the human colonial forces, submitted through proper diplomatic channels. The 47th Terran Expeditionary Force requests assignment to additional Hellworld pacification missions. Our troops have expressed enthusiasm for visiting new and interesting places that are trying to kill them. Please forward any available assignments at your earliest convenience. Attached to the request was,